All right, we're live. Welcome to the RG DFS Tournament Takes podcast. I am your host, Chris Kirkwood, screen name Kirk D's, here with my two boys, per usual. The one, the only, the self-proclaimed best DFS player out of Canada, Tyler Tamboline, toe tag and Tambo. And also here joining us, fresh off the links off the golf course today, is Brett Hartfiel, Killaby2482. How's it going, fellas? We're back for week 4. What's going on? How'd you guys do?
It was a really good week 4 for me. I still had probably too much of the chalky running backs. Still got on to some decent plays outside of the chalk. James Conner had a decent amount of James Conner. And let's see. Oh, and then a little bit of Delvin Cook with the big dog in that game. It's funny how both of those running backs went off. I never correlated those two in any lineup, but had pieces of them in lineups. Outside of that, my wide receivers were fine. I mean, kind of spread out through all different styles of wide receivers, but yeah, really nice week across the industry for me. Tambo, you have any big sweats this past weekend?
I had a couple. I got 100th in the milli, the big one. So I mean, that's not a sweat at 100th, but it was right there. I needed some stuff to happen.
I mean, 100th is usually
Wilson,
like only
tough,
what?
Yeah.
What were you, like 15 points behind first?
Yeah, it was pretty close. It was like 15 points, and it was the DK Metcalf touchdown in the first half was that he messed up and ended up being a touchback. That was brutal because Russ with him. A lot of people had that, but then CeeDee Lamb with Gallup, no Cooper, like the idea of how it was set up, and then just those under-owned running backs. I think we did a good job last week talking about that, and you probably have to do it this week too. It's been a sort of a thing, right, where you got to wade through this chalk that we're used to just saying, plug in the chalk running back and go. There's one this week that we'll have to have a longer conversation about, I'm sure, with Alvin Kamara. But yeah, it was a good week. Otherwise, 12th in the queue, like everything was right there sitting in front of me, and I was just waiting. And when Gallup got that TD at the end, it gave me some hope, but ended up fizzling out. Overall, decent week. Could have been better, but I'll take it and move on to this one, on to week 4.
Kirkwood didn't want to buy any of those Patriots running backs last week, but that was kind of like
I had some Burkhead. Yeah, I mean, I just said I wasn't going down with Sony Michel. I had some Burkhead.
He back end got there. Sony Michel got there in the 4th.
Yeah, I know. That was a good call by you. I had I had a hell of a week. So I did great on Yahoo. So that's always steady. Nice, but the problem was in cash on DraftKings, I got hit with both concussions with Russell Gage and Deontay Johnson. So then I was on mega tilt. Also, I was flying high with my Trubisky to A-Rob with Calvin Ridley stacks everywhere for like the first half when Trubisky broke off that massive run. And then he got benched. So I was.
The funny thing is, week 1, very similar setup, and they allowed him to roll out the 4th quarter where he made the comeback. Week 3, they bench him for Foles, right? Yeah. But it was like
that's always a risk. So I mean, we knew that was possible at any time. But so I was feeling good, and then I was feeling terrible. So I was on mega tilt. So then I hop in the car and I drove to New Hampshire to pound the Celtics. They just crushed my soul, and I did some serious damage. So it was just so I turned with like what should have been a very winning Sunday into a losing Sunday just from the Celtics, just the amount that I buried myself with.
Isn't that funny, Brett, though, that we talked him into it? I was like just pre-show or post-show, I can't remember last week. We're like, today's the day to hammer them. He's like, well, I can't drive there today. We're like, but this is the one. And they end up winning that game enough to suck them back in to go right back there the next day and put the cash down. So I'm sorry about that, Kirkwood. I do feel bad for you, man. I'm just saying it's kind of funny to laugh a little bit at your expense there.
Oh, no, go ahead.
How long is that drive? How long is that drive to New Hampshire for you?
45 minutes. 35,
so really you have to weigh how good is the bet to make this drive.
It was my team. So I was on mega tilt from freaking all of the crowd, from the 2 concussions, from Trubisky getting pulled. So I was on, and I was like, all right. So I started watching the Arizona game because I was like heavily on Kyler anyways, but like, and I had a Isabella, but like, if you didn't have Tyler Lockett, you just weren't winning anything.
That was first half. See ya.
And so I was like, I sacrificed watching football. I was like, okay, it's time to, my boys and aren't going to let me down tonight. And then they made that strong comeback in the fourth, but whatever. And then just blew it. Just were awful. Anyway, crushed my soul, but I'm back. I've put it behind me. I'm ready to move on. But before we do move on, I just want to take care of some business real quick. We're not going to have a long ad read like we've been having, but just seriously, guys, if you aren't premium members, you should be premium members. Give RG's Core 4 premium subscription a try today. It's a discounted price. Go to rotogrinders.com/media/takes. That's once again, rotogrinders.com/media/takes. And you get $5 off your first month of premium. A lot of us are doing great content. We're all putting our blood, sweat, and tears and our plays up every single week. And this is who we play. So, yeah, come be a part of it. All right. Week 4, Tambo, you struck a good chord. So like I was doing a lot of review for like last week, like for trying to get multi-enter stuff down, about like how I could get up, I found 2 keys to the slate last week, to crushing the slate last week. One was like just completely eliminating Darren Waller from the player pool, which I think people should have done anyway, especially when it like him came out like that he was kind of injured. And, that there was like even a report before 1:00 on Sunday that like just sounded bad about him. And we knew we talked about on the show that the Patriots were going to clamp down on him. That's what made the most sense. And so, and he was terrible. So if you eliminated him, and then if you went contrarian at running back a little bit, and I played around with exposure, like capping your running back exposures at like 20% max, then you start to get into, you could have ended up getting up there with some big scores if we're talking about mass entry. So the key really was, the running back chalk failed, and, Darren Waller on a bunch of sites failed. And there were plenty of ways to leverage that, because like some of these passing stacks went off, right? Like there was the double stack, the easiest stack in the game with Russ, Lockett, and Metcalf, who just have the entire target tree, went off. And also Allen Robinson was a nice play too. But, these wide receivers are crushing. So I guess that's something we'll have to address this week. Whether it could be a week where the chalk, does come through, or if it's that these running backs are inherently more risky, just because of the, multiple running back by committees and situations and whatnot, but also pricing. But anyways, we'll get into that. We've got 13 games or 12 games, is it? Because the Steelers, Tennessee,
yeah,
Steelers,
we're down to 12 now.
Yeah, they're gone. And I guess we should keep our eye on the Vikings situation, just because like if somebody pops up with a COVID, things could get dicey, since they did play Tennessee last week.
I think they get those the reports back tomorrow, based upon that.
So I mean, things could just start popping. We saw last night what happened with the president. Anyway, getting COVID. So I mean, COVID is for real. Anyways,
right out of Kirkwood here. COVID's real.
Yeah. Contrary to what Wilson won, will tell you, COVID is very real. Anyways, we've got some monster totals. We've got the Cowboys game, for one, is checking in with a 56 total against the Browns. Cowboys are at home. I mean, there's tons of ways to play that game. We've got the Saints we're going to Detroit, where as a 4.5-point favorite to a 54-point total. But man, a lot of players are out now. A lot of injury situations for the Saints. So today, both Marshawn Lattimore and Janoris Jenkins have been ruled out. So their best secondary pieces are out. Also, Michael Thomas has been ruled out. Some people were thinking he might make it back, and Jared Cook is out. So that is going to inevitably lead to a massive chalk Kamara situation we'll talk to. But also that certainly makes the Detroit Lions passing game, who is healthier now with Golladay back, who looked good last week, makes them a little bit more interesting because that's the path of least resistance there when that Saints defense now. Then we've got Texans. Deshaun Watson is certainly getting a lot of love everywhere against this young and inexperienced and injured Minnesota D, who has just been shredded everywhere, especially in the secondary. So this game has a 53.5-point total. Then we have the Seattle Seahawks going to Miami. We've seen what Russ has been doing, and it doesn't look to be slowing down. And Fitzpatrick has been keeping up with people. So 54-point total there. So there's that. Then we got my boy Josh Allen and a 52.5-point total against the Las Vegas Raiders. So that's certainly a plus matchup for him and the Bills. And then the afternoon hammer alongside the Bills is the New England Patriots against the Chiefs. And if the Pats can stay in this one, this game could jump out, to a shootout too as well. And then we have just a bunch of other games and injury situations that we'll get into, but that's the big picture. What's the slate screaming to you, Brett?
Yeah, I think you hit it. I mean, there's just so many teams that are now hitting that 50 over the 50 projected. I mean, how many overs hit last weekend? That was kind of like the theme of last weekend. So yeah, this is what's happening. No fans in the stands. Away teams' offense looking pretty pure. At least the communication between offense coordinator to quarterback seems to be a lot cleaner. Just offenses seem to be running a lot better. So I think there's just a lot of different ways to go. And yeah, I mean, we're just seeing it just with scores. So I'm really kind of excited for this slate. I've narrowed down my pool in certain areas, but hearing all these defensive injuries have kind of made me do a little bit of research on guys. Like, I mean, just as you were talking, I was researching this Adam Troutman, tight end for the New Orleans Saints. So, I mean, there's just a lot of guys a lot of different pieces. There was no tight end last weekend that really hurt you outside of Jimmy Graham, and he was probably 2% owned. So I don't think there were many tight ends that put up double-digit scores last week.
No. That's the one thing I got right, was not using tight end in a flex spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing. One game I forgot too is I forgot to mention even the Arizona Cardinals game. I'm going to be high on Kyler. I mean, everyone and their mother is talking about Kenyon Drake and the rushing spot again, but we'll get into my thoughts there. I think it's a great week to go back to Kyler. But what are you thinking, Tambo?
It's just, pick your spots. Like, I'm going to use ownership heavily. Look at the games. Like you said, almost all of them are good. Indy Chicago is really the only one that doesn't stand out. And the thing about it is, like, the Baltimore game is not the biggest total, but Baltimore just lost to Kansas City in a, primetime game, a matchup people were waiting to see all year. Washington is extremely banged up. I could see, using some of those Baltimore players just because they're going to probably smash them, just take it out all on Washington. Poor football team, doesn't even have a real team name, but they're going to get destroyed this week. So there's that game that could have it. And then even the Rams and the Giants, it's like a 48 total. It's not like, it's just outside the 50 mark. And then every other game is like 50. So play whoever you want in those games. I think we'll talk about it. I'm making some stands, kind of like Brett said. We'll go into it when we get to our plays. But, the other thing too is we talked about the running back chalk, what we're going to do with Kamara. It's going to be a good segue there in a second. And then the quarterbacks thing, I just bring this up because it's something I've done in the past and, Turney takes. I think it's a good call is you got, a guy like Watson, who I do love, and I'm still going to have a bunch of. I don't care that he's chalk. Last week, everyone said that about, Russell Wilson, and then you needed him. That target tree, everything was pretty tight. It's very similar in Houston. He can do stuff with his legs. There's all kinds of stuff. Not saying to get off Deshaun Watson, and I'm getting ahead a little bit, but I'm just saying there is a way that you can play Kirk Cousins. If you're going to play Russell Wilson, you can play Ryan Fitzpatrick on the other side. Talk about this all the time, how the quarterbacks correlate together. You just can't use them both in the same lineup outside of a Superflex league. I think if FanDuel even still has that. And the main thing is just that there's other ways to set it up where you can save some big money, set up a decent stack still, get a hold of that game, and then start fitting your pieces in around it and just see what you like better, even in something like single entry or 3-max, high dollar.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to play it. That Washington, it's interesting because Terry McLaurin didn't practice on Friday.
Yeah.
He was questionable coming to the game. Man, Steven Sims is out. It's like, what is that offense going to look like? But I get it. I mean, you want to be on that Lamar bounce back spot, right? Like, especially when we loved Kyler playing because Washington's front seven was so good, getting him pressured, opened up a ton of scrambles for him. Same situation could easily happen, although they're a little bit banged up now, so it should just be even easier. But I mean, yeah, could be a huge game for him, but like it's just hard, because of the blowout concerns, and the spread is just,
Give it up for Tambo. Like with Ravens being his number one team, he's been avoiding the Lamar in weeks 1 and week 2. Obviously, week 3 you had an island game for him, but yeah, I mean, you've been right on with avoiding him in week 1 and week 2 with high ownership. So
it's tough, man. Like Kirkwood just said, it's just one of those things. The blowout risk is there, but this week's the only thing that's tricky about it, I don't really like stacking them up because it's so hard to get it right as is, and then with the blowout risk. But then it also is one of those situations where you could just see them bust out, 3 touchdowns in the first half, play the third quarter, get some more rushing yards in, and then you're like, damn, that's kind of good. I could have used that. And if it's Hollywood Brown, right? You get just like a one-off like that as well. So I'm not all in there or anything. I've got some other plays I like a lot more. I just thought I'd bring that up just with the totals. It's like literally every game does have an angle in, and even Indy Chicago, there's probably a couple plays there that we could mention as some one-offs, right? Just for the situations they're in.
Yeah. All right. Let's start it off with the running back position like we usually do. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, Alvin Kamara. Going to be massive chalk. It's going to just keep growing and growing, especially with all this injury news. It's interesting because we've got 2 right there. I love Zeke this week. I love Zeke, and Zeke is like 7,800. Just looks like too cheap. It's like 1999 versus 20. It's like if he was 8,000 versus 7,800, it just feels cheap.
Yeah.
But you're saving 2 off of Kamara. I mean, you love them both. You're gonna try to have lineups jamming both in. But I mean, it's Michael Thomas, I was already expecting to be out, but he was practicing limited. But with Cook out, and their defense hobbled, which it makes it just more likely that it's a good game. It's got this monster total. I mean, it's going to be hard. We saw what Kamara just did. I mean, he did everything. He did everything except rush against Green Bay, but he lit them up in the passing game. 139 receiving yards, 13 receptions, 14 targets, added just about 60 rushing yards to 2 TDs through the passing game. We already know that Detroit is not only bad against the run, but like really bad against the running back pass. And that team everyone shreds them. So like, it's just the situation that's like, oh no, I mean, it's tough to avoid, but there is there is Latavius Murray, who could easily fall into the end zone against Detroit and ruin some of Kamara's production. But how are you guys treating these top 2 guys to start?
Yeah, what I would say is, I mean, both of these guys deserve to be 9K plus for sure, right? I mean, in their roles with how much they've been utilized, we want Alvin Kamara running routes versus getting handoffs anyway. Drew Brees really hasn't shown the propensity to throw it down. This offense, though, is starting to remind me a little bit too much of like the Philadelphia Eagles, where they can't push it downfield as much. Being in Detroit, I still feel they're going to be more than fine putting up points. But yeah, with no Michael Thomas, a little bit less sexy, but Kamara is going to be a huge part of this offense. So, I mean, at 8K, that's the tough part. It's like he's way too cheap. So where, like how highly owned does he have to be where you're just like, okay, I can't be going with this guy. And I like Zeke just as much, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, I'm right there with Zeke. I think Zeke will be less owned. He didn't have that island game like Kamara did against the Packers. So, and game log watchers, Zeke really hasn't popped. He hasn't had a big touchdown game. He's been right there. He's had a touchdown every week, but he hasn't had that massive week. But he's still being highly utilized in this catch game. So personally, I'm siding with Zeke over Kamara just because of ownership play. At RG, let's see, we have Kamara at 25.6% and Zeke at 17.8%. So I mean, I can see Kamara even going up. I don't know if this was before or after the Michael Thomas news, but I can see Kamara being north of even 30% here. So what do you think, Tambo? How do you negotiate the top 2 running backs on the slate?
Yeah, I like Kamara more. I don't really care. I know that there's going to be like a 20% gap for Zeke, and that's some leverage. My leverage play is actually not to switch gears too much, but just to go underneath it, talk about let Russ cook, let Dalvin cook, because that's his name. But I just think that at 7,600, you might forget, but week 1, CEH against Houston was rookie of the year, they said, right? It was automatic. He crushed them. Baltimore, Lamar ran up on him a little bit. Last week, I forget who they played. There was somebody last week. Oh, our boy James Conner. These guys were on him. Like we're going against Houston every week and loving it. So at 7,600, he's looking like he's going to be under 10% owned. I actually like that more than Zeke. The one thing I'm going to say just about the Zeke spot is it's wavering, right? He was up around 20%. Now he's down around 17. It looks like he could even go down to like 15 as Kamara goes higher. So I get from that perspective. But also when we segue to quarterback later, Dak is like 5%. Everyone wants to play Dak last week. Cleveland has not been scary. Their secondary has not been tough. I like that passing game and going back to the well there. So, as much as you could talk about Zeke, I don't hate him. I like Kamara quite a bit more, with no Michael Thomas. Even if he gets just that same 14 targets, he basically gets those short A-dot targets where he's catching all of them. That's like 15 to 20 points beyond, even if it's small yardage on those 14 catches. It's all the yardage that goes with it. And then obviously he's going to do something. So it's just hard to imagine him not getting there. I expect in something big like the Mega Millie this week or whatever, the 44-44, he'll probably be like 40% owned, 45% owned, maybe more. It's just an easy play to put in and get your ceiling and your floor both covered. But I like Cook quite a bit more if we're just going to, stay right there, just $200 less than Zeke. That's my take. What's your thoughts, Kirkwood?
Yeah, so I'm torn, right? Like, so basically Kamara was treated like a receiver last week, which is awesome, right? It's that old Le'Veon Bell when he was actually good situation that we were always targeting. So I love that. I mean, it's monster upside through the air. However, you look at like he's definitely in a snap share or a touch share for running backs. When you look at between him and Latavius Murray, it's basically been pretty much split for running back carries. 31 carries on the season, and Murray has 30. If you look at Zeke, it's the numbers are completely different. Zeke is the true bell cow. 58 of 62 rushing attempts, so 58 versus 4 for Tony Pollard, right? Also 23 versus of the 28 total targets for the running backs on the Cowboys. So it's basically 58 to 4, 23 to 5 in targets. And this is what I want. It's a bell cow in a game where it's a 56-point total. Now, granted, it's kind of a different situation because the Cowboys have a lot of paths that they can go with, and Cleveland is definitely hobbled in their secondary and it's going to be susceptible to Dak in the passing game. But they're still home favorites, right? It's a 56-point total, and Zeke is a true bell cow. And the thing that I'll keep going back to every week because it was so tilting was that when Dak vultured all those three rushing touchdowns against Atlanta, when he still went for 23 fantasy points, but had such monster upside there. So I could definitely see this being another monster upside game. I think Kamara's, obviously he's got monster upside, and it's just a different situation because there's just not many more mouths to feed, and there's a lot of mouths to feed in Dallas. But like, if this is a Zeke game script, if they pound it like they like to do, and he's, they do give up a lot through the pass. Cleveland's been really tough against the rush so far, but like they haven't really faced a really top running game yet, and they've also been susceptible to running back pass. So they've given up 15 passes for 110 yards over the last 2 weeks to the Bengals in Washington. So like there's a path there, through the passing game, even if it's not there for him on the ground. But I think it will be there for him on the ground. So, man, I loved Zeke before this injury news. So like my flag I was planting was going to be Zeke over Kamara. Now I just don't know, man. Like they're both awesome plays. Like it just without Cook, without Thomas, it's like the only thing that can screw it up would be like if Murray rushes in for the touchdowns, which I could easily see happening because like this is such a bad run defense on the Lions. So this is
but
weak.
realistically, like for me, Dak took more of those from Zeke than anyone. If you look at Kamara, games 1 and 2, he got 4 and 5 attempts each game in the red zone. So he got the chance to scored 3 of those scored 3 touchdowns on that. And then last game, they said, look, you're a receiver now. He got 3 targets in the red zone and 1 of the touchdowns. So they're really not like I'm more worried about a guy, some dumb shit like Taysom Hill getting in there, and then we get screwed because of that than I am Murray. I know he gets more, handoffs, but like Brett said earlier, I want Kamara as the wide receiver. He just racks up PPR points and chances of the bonus so strong. Like I said, I just got a feeling Zeke is going to be good, but like I can put Kamara in 70% of my lineups, probably be double the field. Let's say he gets to end, like right now he's showing 25. I'm guessing 35. And then I've still got 30% of my 150 lineups that I don't have Kamara in that I can utilize Zeke, Cook, Eckler, Jacobs, all these guys that we're going to talk about next, right? So I don't know. It's everyone's different, but that's how I'm looking at it right now. And we'll talk about it more when we get to quarterback and wide receiver.
Right. If I would have had to grade like the Kamara and Ezekiel spot, I mean, it's like they're like a 9.5 to a 10. But you're right. I mean, a guy like Delvin Cook is right there. I mean, this is a great spot, and you're just you're going to get him like 1/3 of the ownership. Houston's been giving it up on the ground, and we know what Minnesota wants to do offensively speaking. So Cook's going to be worked, and the best part about it is he's out there all the time being pass receiver also. So even if they get behind, like it could be a good thing in Houston. So
yeah, he hasn't had his big game yet either. He's averaging like 22 a game DK points in the first 3 games, all like 17, 25, 21 or 27. Like he's right there putting up numbers, but I'm saying he can have a 40-point game himself at any time. So I like his ceiling. I like the upside. And if nobody wants to really get on him there at 9% we're showing right now compared to the other guys at 20 and 35, let's call it, I'm fine with that play as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough when your offense only runs like 55 offensive plays in the first 2 weeks. It's nice when they get back to like that 65, 70 sweet spot at least.
And they haven't been passing the ball a ton. And they are not dealing with a normal week. They've been, they're game planning via Zoom from their home.
So they're back in, I believe.
Yeah, but they lost Wednesday and Thursday, I think.
Correct.
So like this is like a short week for them, right? So it makes sense.
So you want a short Minnesota is what you're thinking?
No, I'm thinking that like they're going to want to run the ball. Like
they're just going to stick to the game plan that they know is their MO. Like they run the ball. And then one more thing too, real quick, is that, we haven't talked, we don't normally talk about defenses, but I actually like him with the Minnesota defense. I'm big on Watson, but like I said, in other lineups that I'm not, I always like having the defense against the highest owned quarterback because just it's a way to, you're already saying you're not on him. So why not also get the defense against him and double down on the leverage? And then the thought process there is that that O-line is absolutely terrible. Minnesota, hasn't shown great things this season, as far as their defense is concerned. It's not as good as what we want to see. But if it does, then that's another reason for Cook, because if they don't bring it right to the house, but they get a pick and then land it on the 10 or something, it's just another quick bang for Cook to get. And we really don't got to worry about anybody with Cook. It's all him.
Yeah. And Texas, the Texans have been terrible against the run. So back to Cook, and they're allowing a ton of yards per carry. I think the highest, or they're like 5.8, which is massive. And yeah, sign me up for Dalvin Cook. I like that play. There's some more chalk here. Let's talk about some guys that I like. I mean, I have to like Clyde the Glide, Allaire. And at 6,400 against New England, you can run on New England, and they're going to be, scheming to take away the pass. I mean, everyone's going to probably talk about that, but it's true. They're going to try their best to take away as many of these passing options for the Chiefs as possible, and he's gonna be able to eat on passing downs. And as well as just be able to run against them. So 6,400, I think there's a lot of upside there. Dan David Johnson's catching a lot of love. I'm not so high on him. I mean, I get it, but man, it just doesn't feel good, right? Like, I just haven't seen it out of him. He's not as explosive, and there's just ways to bust. I like this passing game against this young Minnesota defense. So that would be
Johnson's back in the fold there too.
I'm a little bit lower on that. Kenyon Drake is going to be extremely popular, and I get it. It's like the best matchup you can pretty much get against Carolina, and they give it up from all angles. They're just everybody's been able to rush on them so far, and that's been non-talented running backs too. And Drake is getting that usage. He hasn't popped, but he's getting the 20, 18, 16 rushing attempts. But like, the more that people keep piling on Kenyon Drake and keep talking about like this is the Kenyon Drake spot, just makes me want to go back to Kyler, right? Like, my love for Kyler, and he's now leading the league in both rushing yards and rushing touchdowns amongst all quarterbacks. And he is a huge part of their running game, and so everyone's going to talk about Drake, but like, it's very, it could be that Kyler vulturing those touchdowns again just as easily, or also being very efficient in the pass with DeAndre Hopkins. Once again, also has a healthy Christian Kirk. Well, healthier and looking on track to play Christian Kirk. Andy Isabella certainly, looked good last week. And so he should have all the weapons there, and he performs a lot better when he has time, right? Like, he's a guy that is kind of like Jared Goff-esque with like dealing with pass rush. He's very inefficient when he gets pass rush. But Detroit, we always know. I mean, Carolina doesn't get any pass rush, just like Detroit. Is what my thought process was, and so and with all of his weapons, it could be in a very efficient game out of him there. So I'm going back to that game. But what do you guys think? Like, I'm going to the passing game.
Yeah, I mean, with that Arizona situation, the way I look at Arizona offense is very similar to kind of like how I looked at the Chargers. I mean, Tyrod Taylor wasn't really dumping off to his running backs, and that's kind of what we're seeing in Arizona. I mean, it's tough to buy Kenyon Drake when we have so many good plays around that price tag when he's not being utilized in the pass offense, right? I mean, it is $6K, so it is cheap. You're betting on him getting off as a running back versus a Carolina defense that hasn't stopped anybody all year. But it's tough when he hasn't been utilized in that situation. And Kirkwood, I got to give it up. I don't know if it was kind of more of a funny thing that you said Mike Davis was just a cheaper Christian McCaffrey. But my God, I mean, he was put in that same role the last 5 quarters, right? And I mean, here at RG, I was actually surprised that we have him right now at 24.9%. I think in other areas he's not as highly owned, but I mean, at 5,700, a guy that's utilized in this Christian McCaffrey role, I almost would rather go on the other side of the ball here and go with Mike Davis, especially with them, probably playing in catch-up mode. We want them, Carolina, to be behind here for Mike Davis. There's a lot to like in this price range. You're going to hear Joe Mixon hasn't done anything for the last 3 weeks. Also not really utilized enough in the pass game. One of these guys is going to win the week. It's just being on the right guy. I feel the best about Mike Davis's role right now, but I mean, I'm definitely going to be taking shots on a guy like Joe Mixon where his ownership's going to be low just because of, what he's done. But Jacksonville really hasn't been a team to run on. So I don't know. Curious what you think with like the 6K range there, Tambo. What are you liking?
Yeah, I'm big on CEH. Not going to rehash everything that Kirkwood said, but sort of the same reason. And we, one thing we'll talk about is, Belichick. You made a good call last week. I was one of those guys that I did like Waller. Obviously, the Sunday injury news and stuff, just how he was not going to be 100%, sort of hindered it a little bit. But then at the same time, I figured they would focus in on Jacobs, and just not the case. And so that's the thing here. Same sort of thing. But, with the Chiefs, there's nothing you could do. You're going to try and slow them down as much as you can, right? Mahomes is definitely a cheat code. We just saw what they did to the Ravens last week. it's tough to beat, man. Their offense is incredible. And with guys like Kelsey and Tyreek Hill, you can't put a stop on everyone. So as Kirkwood said, I do think CEH is going to have his way and get there, and just on sheer volume, right? Just being able to get checked down to in different situations throughout the game. And then if they get up, as I expect them to, New England has not been the same. I like some stuff in that game that we'll get to for sure. And I think this could be a great game to target. That we know there's more expensive pieces. So, people will target it. It's not that. It's that how can they figure it out on how to target it correctly? Like use certain guys. You might have to use a wide receiver in your flex versus everybody likes to use a running back and all these different things. So I'm in on him. I like him. I still like Drake. I'm not really against, like you said, we haven't seen as good of a matchup, I don't think, yet. And I like your Kirkwood or your Kyler leverage there, Kirkwood. I think that's a good one. I like that more than I do trying to make this David Johnson play work. And if I eat my words, so be it. I feel like that's just the obvious leverage play with all the Watson ownership. So it's easy to say, let's play David Johnson. He's a great tournament play for that reason. But is he when he's not really, necessarily leverage in that range? He's still getting high ownership with a guy like Mike Davis, with a guy like Kenyon Drake, with all those guys in there. Do you need to go there? And then Brett, I do like Joe Mixon. Like I say, Jacksonville might not be the matchup, but he's still been getting really fair usage, 18 type touches, or as far as carries go, and then targets as well, 3 and 4. It's not much, but if Cincinnati and Jacksonville go back and forth, we get a little Burrow Minshew matchup. I'm pretty excited for that, to be honest, with a decent total. I like games like this with two mediocre, or even call them bad teams, that you can just get one-on-one and just make the best of it. We saw it with Denver and the Jets on Thursday Night Football, right? Everyone expected to be a massive under. It was a massive over. These teams suck. They just want to prove themselves to, do you call it the quote-unquote loser bowl? That's what you're trying to see. These teams don't even suck, but I know what? Joe Burrow is going to be getting his first win this week. We'll get there, but that's definitely a take I have. So I do like Mixon. I like them to be ahead and up. And then Mike Davis, I don't know. Like I said, the usage is definitely there, but it's hard for me to, go both sides in that. You'd have to play them separately. That's no problem. You can even utilize Lineup HQ to set up a group if you want. I don't really like Davis and Drake in the same game, but you could do what Kirkwood said and set up some Kyler stacks and use Mike Davis on the other side. I do like that for those types of lineups that I set up, and that's sort of how I feel about this range. One last quick note, Carlos Hyde, not sure what you guys are going to think about him, homer in the situation here against Miami, but with the news today of Jamal Adams out and Seattle being a little bit banged up, and already teams have just been thrown on. The reason Russ has looked so good is because the defense is not good, and guys have been able to chuck on them. We know Fitzmaniac is going to be out there just doing anything in his power to try and stay in this game. It does worry me a little bit about Hyde, because I like Hyde in more of a blowout, and I don't see this being a complete blowout. I'm not sure how you guys feel about that.
I think Carson's on schedule to be back too. I think that's the latest I saw. Let me double check that. People were downplaying the injury. I listened to a podcast, and with Dr. David Chow, whatever your feelings are about him. But he thought it was more of
hairline fracture.
No. He thought it wasn't a big deal. That there was more like like them standing by, like how them kind of talking up the tackle and how bad it was, and like saying, like acting like he was more hurt than he really was, and saying that he expected Carson to be fine. And now Carson says it's going to be a game time decision. Carroll's been upbeat about him heading into this week. Said he looked good at practice. He did practice on Thursday and Friday. Carlos Hyde was limited at practice today on Friday too. So I don't know what's going on.
It's flip-flopping a little bit. I think their bye week is in like a week or two. And I just think that, they're going to say that and bring it up. And who knows, right? We don't know, but definitely something to monitor. I think it's an interesting situation either way, but I wasn't really going to be in on Hyde regardless. And if Carson plays, I don't think as much as he'd only be, 2 to 3% owned just because people are scared of it. It's not one that I think is going to be necessary with everything else that we have on the slate at the running back position. And with them having the ability to go to these other guys, especially if Hyde plays, then it would just worry me a little bit more about going that route. And like I said, I still think the passing games here are going to be quite heavy.
But man, I'm going to be heavy on this Arizona Cardinals Panthers game without Drake. I'm going to be heavy on the passing. I'm going to be heavy on Kyler Murray. I'm going to be heavy on DeAndre Hopkins. I'm going to be heavy on Mike Davis. Like Brett said, I like that coming back. I mean, I just
Hopkins
love
right now. Did you guys see that he was possibly a game time decision also?
I think he's going to be fine too.
Okay.
I'm going under the assumption that he's going to be okay, that it's just like a pain management thing.
Yep, that's what I got from I think the general manager talked. He's kind of a little bit more outspoken in Arizona. So,
and no one has any like real info. I mean, I guess it's something to monitor, but I'm going on the assumption that he's fine. And so I'm just going to go right back to this passing attack, but I also love DJ Moore, which we'll get into too. So, I mean, it's just so stackable, this game. And like, I can fade the Kenyon Drake, chalk running back and just hope that he busts again. And I have a good feeling that he will.
You want to play any Larry Fitz though? I know we're not a wide receiver yet, but they promised to get him more targets.
Why are they saying that?
And Isabella did all that work last week, by the way, on like 50% of the snaps. I think it was like nothing compared to.
But it's a lot for him. A lot for.
It was a lot for him. You're right, but that's crazy though. They need to use him more.
Yeah, and we'll see what if Kirk does come back and what they're saying about him. But like, there's just a lot of options in this game to go to. But like, but it's like it's impossible. We'll get into DeAndre Hopkins when we talk about the wide receivers. But man, like all the numbers with this guy are just insane. All right, other running backs. Before we head on over to quarterback, just trying to. So I like. It's not going to be the same. So there's two I like actually. I mean, no one wants to play James Robinson at 6,500 because they can't get over this James Robinson. But man, this guy's looked awesome. I had him last week on the Thursday slate on Yahoo. Thankfully I did. He went absolutely bananas. Cincinnati is a great matchup for him. Like, everyone's going to be going on like your guys play with
Mixon. And I might just bail on that right now. The way you just brought that up, that already makes me think right away that's like an obvious one to just move off Mixon and play Robinson.
There's so many good running back plays today or this week.
Yeah. And I like Joe Burrow side. There's more injuries to the to their defensive line for Cincinnati. So this could be a really good spot for James Robinson to go. But like, the guy I really like, man, it's an awful matchup. But like, David Montgomery, right? Like, I've always liked this guy. I've always thought he's really talented, and his metrics are all good with like yards after contact, with like all of that. They're all good. He's just never gotten passing down work, and he's been completely game script dependent, right? And so it's always been like, play David Montgomery in good game scripts for Chicago and winning game scripts. And, but that's not the case anymore. With Tariq Cohen going down, he could be a true bell cow now and get that passing work and get it on both sides and be used even if they are down. And there's also more life now to this offense, the Bears offense, with
Nick Foles,
Big Dick Nick. So, I mean, it's a lot of life, and there's a lot of momentum. And it's a tough matchup against Indianapolis. But 5,500 for a true bell cow and a guy that I think is really talented is really interesting to me. Are you guys interested at all?
I'm probably not going to go there. You're going to get him for lower ownership. I think even lower ownership than what we have. We have him at 4.5%. My low ownership play is going to be Devin Singletary at 5.9. So just for $400 more, I think, again, it's mainly a price point play, right? Kind of what you said at James Robinson paying up for $6.5K. This kind of hinges a little bit on Zach Moss being available or not, but I mean, he gets a great matchup against Las Vegas, and just loved how they utilized him last week as a bell cow. So I don't think a lot of people are going to go there because they're going to be heavily researched on all these other 6K guys. And if that Zach Moss is ruled out kind of last second, I don't think a lot of people are going to pivot enough to him. But a spot where I like the over in that game specifically. So, I think we only have him at 2.5% owned. So I'll be definitely going well heavy on that.
I'm more into the Montgomery take, actually. I had him marked here. I just didn't know if I wanted to be the one to bring him up because it's kind of disgusting. But, yeah, I actually like him, and I marked him up on my sheet with Chicago D, right, back at home. And Rivers makes a lot of mistakes at times. He absolutely can make mistakes. So I know that automatically, Indy's been getting all the pressure up front. But like you said, the Foles thing I think is big. The fact that Cohen's out, so there's some other what-ifs that he goes off, and he's a perfect pivot to Mike Davis, who's right there. It's like you said, when Montgomery hits the open field, he's gone. And you could see an 80-yard TD early. Also, that game is only I think it's like a 1.5 point spread or something. Like Chicago could absolutely win this game, and it could be a letdown spot for Indy. And people naturally want to talk about Jonathan Taylor and what that passing game has looked like lately and what they could do in the defense, especially. But Foles is a little bit of rejuvenation for them. I know it's whatever, but Super Bowl winning Nick Foles, I mean, we're talking about a guy that got it done at the hardest time. It's now he just has to win a game at home on a week 4 game against a old school Phillip Rivers Indy squad. Like, this is a spot that I like. So I do like that call, Kirkwood, and I would pair him up with the D. They could do some damage against a guy like Rivers coming out on the road. So I don't mind that at all. It's a little mix up there.
So many in this range. So one last one we didn't even talk about is Henderson on the Rams. I mean, he 22 fantasy points against Buffalo, after 20 against Philly. Now against the Giants in a great matchup. Akers is out definitely again, they're saying that he's going to get the start now. I mean, we know that they split with Malcolm Brown, but yeah. I mean, there's one guy who's electric and there's one guy who isn't, and it's Henderson is electric, right? And it's like it's against the Giants, so like he's another guy that will just get overshadowed here because of all of these guys that are in play. But like, would it shock you for him to absolutely go off in a game where the Rams are heavily favored, home favored, 13-point favorites right now? McVay loves to run, and he schemes, great run schemes for his guys. So he's a obvious play to me for like lower ownership.
Yeah, I mean, two touchdown favorite. Cam Akers looks like he's not going to play with that rib injury. So I'm right there with you. The 3-headed monster goes down to 2 heads, and Malcolm Brown has looked terrible. So right there with you.
I couldn't find the stat, but I'm with you on that. And it was Henderson is just smashing Brown. And like I said, with Akers out, they got a 31-point team total. I was going to talk about them, which are about to go to quarterback anyway, but I was going to bring that up. I actually like that game for some back and forth. I think the Giants could keep it a little closer, and then we want games like that for a spot like Goff. That's kind of where we want him at, right? So, he can utilize that and go with his guy. But one more I just forgot to bring up quick, and then we can go over, is Austin Eckler. Somebody posted today, I forget who, but it was the last 11 starting running backs to face the Buccaneers, and they're just getting smashed, right, on the ground and with touchdowns and with everything by running backs. So I do like that already. Like I said, I haven't been a huge fan since week 1 of Tyrod and that game that they've got on the go over there. So, or now with Herbert in there, I should say. But with Herbert in there, what was it last game? He got 31 DK points, had 12 rush attempts, 11 targets. And it's pretty tight. We're going to talk about that in a second, but I do like that game as well. And you can use Eckler in the passing game, and you can put him in your stack with, spoiler alert for later, but Keenan Allen, 19 targets last week and pretty much free on DraftKings this week. So clearly it's a tight target tree on where they're going with their passes there. And with going up against Tampa Bay, I think that they're going to have to pass quite a bit. And that could be a spot that you could easily stack up that's extremely unique for large field GPPs.
Tampa Bay is usually a team that I avoid for sure with running backs, but I'm looking at the running backs that have just gone up against them, and they've been dicing them up through the air. So you had both Mike Davis, Christian McCaffrey. That game that McCaffrey got hurt, Davis obviously had a huge fourth quarter. Kamara went against them. So very similar style running backs. Denver didn't do much on the ground. They're still only giving up less than 3 yards.
They're the best against the rush in the league.
Correct. So
on the ground, but they
and I should have stipulated you did it for me, Brett. I'm talking about pass catching running backs. Guys get 11 targets. They get crushed.
Yeah, they get torched to the passing game. And, so Eckler makes perfect sense.
Exactly what you want when you have an Eckler, right? Getting it through the air. One guy that we still haven't brought up is Ronald Jones. Now, Fournette was just ruled out. So, I mean, this is a spot where I don't know. I kind of got burned with Ronald Jones in week 2. I went all in on Ronald Jones. I'm going to be right there. And I know pre-show I asked you about a defense that has kind of been injury riddled. I mean, this is the Los Angeles Chargers. Like at every single level, they've lost their studs on the line, linebacker, safety. Like they're all out. They're all pro guys. So to me,
might have lost Brett here for a minute.
Lost Brett. Okay, I was like thinking it was mine. All right,
4,700.
So, Brett, we lost you.
Okay, I can hear you now.
All right, finish your point, and we'll move on to quarterback. Sorry, we lost you for like the last 20 seconds.
Go ahead. I was just talking about Ronald Jones, but I'm unstable internet, so I'm going to reboot.
Okay, so we'll move it on. I mean, there's too many plays at running back, and so as Blender would say, play whoever you want.
Exactly.
All right. But we gave some good pivots. Quarterback position. This is another spot, play whoever you want, but really it's all about play the stack that you want, right? So like guys that are coming in, ownership doesn't matter, but the guys that are going to be popular because the popular stacks are the popular game totals. So Deshaun Watson is going to be extremely popular at 6,600. Dak Prescott is going to be extremely popular at 7,200. Russell Wilson is going to be popular at 7,800. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with Dak, Deshaun, Russ, Mahomes, Kyler, Fitzpatrick is when we start digging for like cheaper guys. A guy that's going to go overlooked because his price went up, who's my boy, who I constantly love, is Josh Allen in a great matchup against Las Vegas, the Raiders. But like, there's ways to make every one of these guys work and to build really solid lineups with all these guys, right? Like just off the top, like Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs, awesome stack this week, in my opinion. I already planted my flag. I'm going to plant it all throughout this show with Kyler and DeAndre Hopkins. But like, and Russ has the most concentrated target tree in the league where basically Lockett and Metcalf, they account for 81% of Seattle's air yards and 50% target share. Russ is cooking. We know where it's going. We know what he's serving. He's serving those two guys. And like, that's another potential massive shootout again. And, both of these running backs are now banged up. So, and Russ is MVP candidate, right? Like leading league for MVP, the leading MVP candidate. So like, it's hard to not like these guys, and you can make these stacks with make them, leverage them with some different running back plays to give yourself a good shot at taking down some of these big tournaments. You can have a chalky stack, especially if it's a 2-man stack, because it's used typically, I'm talking about 3 total with the quarterback and 2 of the receiving options, because that's typically used less than the just one of the receiving options. So there's so many ways to do it that I'm thinking about narrowing down my quarterback pool as we go on now this season. And the guys that I've narrowed it down to for this week, I have them start. It's Dak, Deshaun, Russ, Mahomes, Kyler, Fitzpatrick, Josh Allen, and then I'm interested in Lamar, but like I'm worried about him, and then Joe Burrow. I know Tamble's going to like that, but that's my pool right now. That's what I'm working with. You guys could sell me on Drew Brees, noodle arm, if you want. Maybe I could come around to it. I'm certainly more interested in Matthew Stafford at this point, because now with this secondary in shambles, with Lattimore out and Jenkins out of the Saints. So I'm going to, probably going to look to have, maybe include him, but that kind of dropped right before we got on the air here. But that's my pool. You guys hate it, like it, add to it, do whatever you want. What are you guys thinking at quarterback?
I mean, the 8 quarterbacks that you said all have like one thing in common. They can also run. And that's major. I think I mean, time and time again, we've seen this. You need that rushing quarterback production to win this year. So, I mean, even though the quarterbacks are now starting to rise over 7K, I think that's where I'm going to be landing. One guy that I'll dip down is probably having a little bit of Fitzpatrick exposure, thinking that Miami-Seattle game goes back and forth. And even Fitzy, I mean, he can get loose. I know he's like 35 years old, whatever.
Dude, Sam Darnold was amazing. That run was so nice. It was
that
fucking awesome last night.
That safety got just eaten up, man. But yeah, totally agree. I'm right there with you. Cam Newton, Kyler Murray, Dak.
Yeah,
Josh
I didn't mention
Watson.
Cam because I'm scared of it. Like this. So now
I got a couple sales pitches for you. I got Cam in one of them, and I got Drew Brees in the other. So these are the two. So I love Deshaun. I don't care. It's like I said, I get that he's the highest owned, but it hasn't hurt us. And realistically, back to Brett's point, that's why we're playing the same quarterbacks every week, because these are the guys that dominate. And we've learned that you got to get a little bit different at running back. I think we just crushed the running back section with a bunch of pivots, good reasons why, ways you can angle it and build your lineups and construct your rosters accordingly. Quarterbacks kind of like leads automatically into the wide receivers that go with them. So we'll talk about that when we move over. But real quick on Cam, what I love about this is sort of the spot. So Baltimore, it got out of hand, right? I know, Kansas City got out ahead, but like they were running all over them in the first. Like Cam here can run a bunch. This is a spot if they can just use them. And with me talking earlier about Belichick wanting to keep Mahomes off the field, it doesn't mean he's going to. I get it. Kansas City's amazing. But Cam Newton's not, he's no slouch. So what I'm saying is he can run all over them. 6,400 is kind of right there in that pivot price to a guy like Watson, Joe Burrow, who I like. But at the same time, even if he has to start passing it, it's not like he doesn't have options. Like I said, we're going to start talking about wide receiver here because we're talking about stacks. You got N'Keal Harry. You got Damiere Byrd, who we've been talking about all along. You got Edelman. You got guys that he can utilize in the pass game. And then if he gets it close, there's always that option for him just to run a couple in. We've seen it already with him, and that's been sort of their MO. Kansas City gets run all over. I have no clue why the Ravens abandoned it so quickly. I know they got down at some, but they just were too quick to abandon it, in my opinion. I'm obviously a homer there, but I'm just saying their teams can run on Kansas City. We've seen it even week one, back to my earlier call with CEH, looking against Houston really good. That same game, that was the opening game of the season on Thursday Night Football, people were telling me that David Johnson was the comeback player of the year because he was running all over Kansas City. And Cam Newton's the running back in this game. We don't know yet. I don't believe so. If James White's going to be back, obviously had some extremely wrenching news, devastating with his dad passing away, his mom in critical condition, all that. So he's been out. Burkhead and Sony Michel have been getting it in, but I still like Cam, man. I think this is a good spot for him. I'll open it up to you guys in a second on it, but I do want to give you the Drew Brees pitch real quick because you mentioned it. Talk about this all the time. Used it with Sanders, when he was heavy chalk. It didn't fully work out, but, when you've got the most chalky player on the slate in a running back in Kamara, and we're saying it's going to be because we love the passing game so much, why wouldn't you use the guy who's going to be able to pass him the ball? Kirkwood, you just mentioned earlier, a team like Detroit gets no pressure. So Noodle Arm himself, Drew Brees, might have a little bit of more time. They're on the road. I don't expect it now. It's not as nice as if we could get it in the dome, of course. But on the road, I still don't expect them just to run away with this thing. With their defense in shambles, as we've talked about, people are automatically going to go to Stafford because of that. $100 cheaper. You got Brees right there, the guy that's been doing it. Hall of Fame, Drew Brees, with options. And talk about the cheap stack you can make. Drew Brees, Kamara, and then what about our guy Troutman, who we're going to talk about later, like min price at tight end. So with Jared Cook out, then you got that situation that you can always set that up and then run it back with a guy like Golladay. So there's my pitches, man. Give me the rebuttal and just thoughts on those two plays.
Yeah, I mean, with your Cam Newton, James White has been practicing all week, so I think that looks good for the Patriots offense in general. Probably downtick N'Keal Harry's like short A-dot targets, but uptick like the offense in general. So you got to like seeing at least them getting another pass catcher in this offense for Cam.
I'm interested in Cam. It's as a New England guy, it's just a little scary thinking that they might just get wrecked this week to Kansas City because Kansas City looks so good. But if they do show up, like I do think if they can keep up with them, Cam will have a good game. They has to have a good game, and Edelman will be a big time big time, guy in this against the Chiefs, in my opinion. So I think that makes for a pretty easy stack. I think Damiere Byrd is definitely in play because he's so cheap. You can do that. Harry's cheap, but like I think Edelman would be the guy. And then you could always get the rushing upside and rushing touchdown with Cam. So I'm definitely interested. I'm just a little scared. I just love Kyler so much that like and I love Josh Allen, and I don't think anyone's going to go there.
What about that Breeze pitch though? That was the one I was really hoping you get back.
It's noodle arm though. That's my problem. But like really, he's going to hit these. It's like Kamara can go for like break an 80-yard run, and that's like an 80-yard pass.
He can drag Breeze to the finish line. Yeah, man, just on that. Exactly.
Yeah, my whole situation with Drew Brees is I thought they were going to start working in a little bit of Taysom Hill packages, and that really hasn't happened as much as I thought they were going to. And they've had plenty of weeks now without Michael Thomas. So I
just feel like he needs Michael Thomas is what I feel like. That's like
this
if
offense.
Thomas was in this game, I'd be ready for Drew Brees, and I may be wrong.
He's totally in there this week. His name is just Alvin Kamara. That's all.
Yeah. We'll see.
I don't think he sold us. I think that's where we're at.
Well, I'm stubborn. My mind has already been made up on.
He's got so much Kyler that's going to be incoming that there's just no room. He can't fit.
And Josh Allen, I love Josh Allen. So like the Bills, right? Like their defense is great, but they've been banged up, and they've now given up 32 points to the Rams.
They got those two guys back that I think you were talking about last week.
Yeah, they actually played last week too, I think.
Oh. Okay.
I think they came out of the woodworks, but like they are back. But like but in 28 points to the Dolphins, right? Like so it's they're taking risks down the field with Josh Allen, and it's another target tree that I like. It's like Diggs I just love, and like John Brown is coming back, and like I like him. So it's like if you want, I would probably lean towards just going with Josh Allen and Diggs, but like I wouldn't be opposed to doing just Josh Allen and Brown or doing both Diggs and Brown because it's doable, and then running it back with like with Waller this time now that everyone's like been hurt by him. Jacobs I'll pass on it. Waller's my guy this week because the only thing that could stop me for the Waller, it's like they could put Tre'Davious White on him, and that may happen, but I'm not sure that they will. And if I just feel like he'll with Ruggs out again, like he'll command, and I'm expecting him to be completely healthy and fine now, and I think that's the reports are saying he is. So if he's fine and not like limited, and I just see a ton of upside for like ton of targets, and that's now he's a little bit out of favor, although he's going to be chalk still again because like there's just not many options at tight end this week. But you could go Josh Jacobs. But I just want to pass. I just want more passing option. I get
one other guy though I want to bring up is Jared Goff. Talked about him a little bit, and this is just whatever. We talked about Darrell Henderson. I do like that, and so it's tough to get behind this one. I'm not really going to try and sell you on it because he's expensive. He's $6,700 for Goff. I think he is, but I just think it is interesting that there's going to be like basically no love for this guy right now. He's showing at 2% on RG, and they have a 31-point team total at home in a game against the Giants. So I don't know. I feel like there could be some opportunity there. Like how do they score 31 points? I mean, they got to do something, right? Kupp, Woods, Higbee, Henderson, there's all the guys. And that's what makes me like Henderson a little bit more just talking about it out loud. But coming in, I'm definitely still interested in that. And I think it's a spot where, like you said, there's a pretty narrow target tree, kind of like a Russ Lockett Metcalf with Kupp and Woods. It's just maybe make your lineups accordingly with, some with Goff in the passing game and some with Henderson in that running game and just get your coverage that way. But I think they do put up close to that 31 points. That's just my take for the week.
Yeah, it's just tough for me to pay like a $6,700 price tag on a quarterback that doesn't really run as much, right? When we have all these guys that are so mobile at that same price or a little bit more. So,
and I know Kirkwood got his Murray flag right there, and so it's tough, especially because of that. But the one thing I do like is also like my Cam take is $100 more than Deshaun Watson. Everyone will tell you that's the worst play of all time to play Goff because you've got Watson right there for $100 less.
I can't believe Goff
is crazy.
$6,700.
But
he should be priced with like Fitzy this week.
Exactly.
Oh, for sure. He should be way down there, but that, I call it paying up for probability, right? You're going to you're paying up because you're going to get him at like 2%. And if he crushes and somehow Watson doesn't get there, then you just have massive, massive leverage on a lot of the slate, right? Already.
Yep. I get it. Fitzpatrick, I have to like him.
You got to have him in play. You got to have him in play. I mean, at that price tag of 5,400. Yeah.
You think people will use him in cash this week?
Yeah.
I think so.
Will. Yeah, I do too. All right. Take us home with the Joe Burrow sell, Tambo.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we can't segue just yet, but it's not really a sell. I mean, it's just, I got them winning this week. I said it last week, and what was it? A tie, right? He tried his best. He did everything he could, man. He didn't throw it 61 times like we thought, but I just, jotting down notes as we go here, just thinking about things. I was already in on him. I like this guy quite a bit. I think the upside's there. His coaches said it, and I watched it. He does have to be a little bit more careful in the pocket. He's a little bit reckless at times, and I thought he was going to be out for a second there. I was worried it was collarbone or something. He came right back in. He was all good. Got rocked a little bit, but I like his weapons. I like Tyler Boyd. I like Mixon, as we talked about. He can do some check downs there, but just in general, I think it's a good spot. The price tag is right. Upside can be there, and like I said too, with your call with James Robinson, I think that actually sets up well, man. I would love to have even if it's just a mini stack. You talked about using Allen and Diggs. You could run like Allen, Diggs, Waller, and I do like that. And because Allen is the sort of the goal line attack, you don't really maybe need John Brown in there, but you could put him in. It's just you don't maybe need that. But with Joe Burrow, it's kind of the same. You could run like him and Boyd. We know Boyd's going to get a bunch of targets, decent matchup. Everything sets up well for him, which we're going to go to wide receiver in a second. But then you get James Robinson on the other side doing the damage for Jacksonville. I think that's a fine little three-man stack that absolutely has upside and a decent ceiling for what you're looking for in these large field tournaments, and then just start plugging in whatever after you got those three in your lineup. It's not going to be very popular to see those three starting your lineups off.
Yep. All right. Okay, let's move it on over to wide receiver. We've already hit on a ton. I'll start us off right now with DJ Moore because he's going to be extremely chalky. But so Moore is is going to erupt, right? Like everyone's going to talk about that. Basically, CMC is still on the shelf, number one, right? Then you look at all of his metrics. He ranks 7th in total air yards this season. Has a massive target share, or total air yard percentage share, team share, 49%. He's averaging over 17 yards per reception. He ranks 9th in total targets, with 26 so far. Should get extra opportunities in this high-paced game with the Cardinals, right? With the way that they play. Arizona's defense has been pretty good, but they've given up massive games to wide receiver ones over the last 2 weeks, which we saw with Terry McLaurin and Kenny Golladay in his first game back, put up a nice score against them. So, all the signs are there for DJ Moore. His price is so reasonable for a wide receiver one in a game with a monster total. And he just so happens to correlate really well with my favorite stack that I've planted throughout this show, Kyler Murray. So I love him. I'm going to be on him. I'm also going to be on Mike Davis, like I said. But then we've got Tyler Lockett. We're going to have to talk about him. He's a little bit priced up on DK. But on some other sites, he's very reasonable. Like on Yahoo, he's priced lower than Metcalf. DK has him ahead of Metcalf, but he's got the so not only does he put up 40 fantasy points and just absolutely nuke the slate last week, right? And 13 targets, 9 receptions, 100 yards, 3 TDs is really what did it, but had a deep ball too, right? So they went deep to him, but he mans the slot. And he's got the matchup this week against the Dolphins, who are just that's the path of least resistance. So Howard should be matched up with DK Metcalf, and then and Lockett should be operating on a slot, and it should just be easy pickings for Russ and Lockett again. So he's got the matchup. Now ownership isn't going to be in his favor because people are going to want to play this guy, but the upside is there, and it's obviously. Either of these guys are good plays in a vacuum with Metcalf or Lockett. Either of them can go off because we saw Metcalf, abuse Gilmore, and Metcalf could, put up 23 last week and could have had an even, much bigger game if he didn't fumble that touchdown like a moron, which I'm sure he learned his lesson. But Tambo will never.
Does he get his
Tambo
next
will
touchdown?
never forget that or forgive him.
Does he get his second touchdown if he gets that first one? You know, so
that's the thing.
like,
Butterfly effect always is what it is.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying. It's
That's
always
what I
tough.
thought
But
too.
you know, with that and then Lamb in that lineup, what pissed me off was Cedric Wilson ate up all Lamb's lunch. He got like 2 touchdowns, a career game after having like 5 catches in his career since 2018 when he was like a 6th-round draft pick. So anyway, that's enough talking about that, Kirkwood. We're on to the next game here.
Yeah. Other guys, Odell Beckham, cheap, right? Like, so it's like running backs in great spots and great total who are like alphas who have massive, like they just have that potential. Odell Beckham, right? Like it's all been the narratives, like he's going to have to take a seat back to this team that likes to run so much. But like the Dallas secondary is trash. They're all injured, right? And this is a game where there's going to be tons of points scored. They're going to have to keep up. And, you know, Beckham's 5,800, right? Like this is just a massive eruption spot for him with the potential. I love Diggs. Diggs is the man. So like he's in play for me. I even said before, I like Edelman. He's 5,700. This is a guy who just had his career high 179 yards 2 weeks ago in Seattle. Yes, the defense is tougher. The Chiefs, like they certainly looked good, but like Belichick should be able to scheme some good plays for Edelman and Cam to you know keep going again. It's just the price. He's 5,700, and if they keep up in this game, and you guys like Cam, Edelman's just obvious. Devontae Parker, it's just like the obvious bring back, 5,700. There's so many upside wide receivers in this range. Everyone's talking about wide receivers are the, you know, there's just upside, and like they've been more. We've been able to count on them for production more than running backs so our season. So it's tough to get away from a lot of these guys. Those are kind of all the chalkier guys that I'm really liking at this point, and then we'll get into some flyers from there. But what are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I think like out of that whole group, I mean, guys that I want to plant my flag on would be like a Devontae Parker. Doesn't look like he's going to be as highly owned, but it's just a spot where I think Miami is going to be behind. And you know, Seattle hasn't stopped wide receivers all year. I don't expect this to be a spot where they start. Odell Beckham, like I just feel like Cleveland's going to have to come out of their shell in this game to make it a good game in Dallas. And Kareem Hunt's been questionable. I don't know whether he's going to give it a go or not. But man, if he doesn't play, like I just
he's going to play. He's been practicing.
I just feel like they have to come out of their shell if they want to make this a game versus Dallas's highly potent offense. And, you know, they could go the exact opposite way. You know, if they're having success on the ground, keeping it out of the Dallas offense, right? I don't hate that version. I think there's multiple ways to stack that game up, but I think I'm going to have plenty of Odell in that spot. But yeah, I mean, you hit on the DJ Moore.
He's 5,800. If he busts,
it's insane.
Then so be it. But like he could put up 35 fantasy points, and I wouldn't blink an eye for 50. You know, in this matchup, in this game total. So like it's hard to.
I mean, we know also about Will Fuller's hammy, right? So I mean, we haven't seen much out of Brandon Cooks.
But I love Will Fuller.
In a game that we expect a lot of points being up and a potential. I mean, one guy that you have to worry about in-game injury is Will Fuller. So I think Brandon Cooks in a spot versus Minnesota's defensive secondary that is not only young but has, I mean, been beaten all over the place. I love Cooks at 4,500.
Keep saying that. Pump that narrative, baby. Pump that Brandon Cooks narrative. I want everybody to keep pumping, and I get it.
So you go with Fuller?
Yep. He's off the injury report, man.
Yeah, he said he's fine. That's one of my conviction plays. I'm in on Fuller at the price. Like you said, the interesting part is I'm not as high. I get for those stacks, especially with DJ Moore, and I also get that you can play 3 or 4 wide receivers if you want with the flex, and I'm all for that. You know, I actually like building lineups like that. But I like with everybody else around him, you got, you know, Devontae Parker, who you guys, you know, mentioned there. You've got Julian Edelman we talked about. You got AJ Green is right below, CeeDee Lamb. Like there's all guys that I can see these stacks. One guy I forgot to mention, a quarterback, was Dak. I told you I like that little leverage spot there. I'll go back to guys like Lamb, Gallup, you know, just part of the deal. Like you got to just let last week go and move on to the next one. And really, it's a nice, same price for CD Lamb. He actually still got quite a little bit of run out of the slot there. It just didn't end up panning out, as I just talked about with Cedric Wilson. But Odell is the guy, like you said, 5,800. Game on the other side of that with Dallas, I'm fine with that. Edelman, Parker, right there. I'll play some more, but I like the guys around it more. I like, no pun intended.
I want to hit the rewind. I want to hit the rewind button before I forget, because you said you slipped the AJ Green in there.
Yeah.
And so I want you to hone in on AJ Green because I need to be sold. I know
it's really hard to be.
I know it's all the air yards and everything, but like I want to play Boyd. But like I'm open to being sold on AJ Green. Is it just optimism? Then it's also like his air yards and his like the targets are there.
Yeah, and it's Joe Burrow. And I know this is crazy narrative and it's terrible, but I really do think these younger quarterbacks when they come in, like AJ Green's not no superstar no more or anything like that, but he's a guy, right? It's a guy Burrow wants to connect with. He's tried, man. He's really been trying, and you can sit there and say all you want that it's just not going to work because AJ Green's washed. I don't think so. I don't think AJ Green is Larry Fitz right now, where it's like, yeah, come on, step out of the way, go play some more golf, give Andy Isabella some more run if Kingsbury will let that happen. This isn't that situation. AJ Green's fine. It's pretty cheap for him.
He's probably going to get better. He's going to get better, and he's probably going to connect.
The chemistry should only get better.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I love Boyd. That's my guy. That's what I'm talking about earlier. I like that stack where you don't even need AJ Green, but I'm just saying if you get into a spot where you got Burrow throwing it a bunch again, like we've seen, in most games he actually has more than what some of these other quarterbacks that we're talking about have as far as pass attempts go. It's what if those connect? I'm trying to win, the Millie Maker here. What if those connect and AJ Green has a ceiling game? What's he going to be? Well, I didn't even look. RG's got him right now at, of course, I don't got it sorted by price. I apologize, but let's have a quick look here. AJ Green, 2%. Meanwhile, DJ Moore, 23%. And it's Joe Burrow chucking him the ball in a game that I think could go back and forth a little bit. I'm really not scared of that. That's a 22 to 2% difference. Talk about leverage. My God, that's huge.
He's 100% on the Josh Hermsmeyer's buy low model. I haven't looked at it, but I guarantee you he's 100% there. All right, last guy. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to recommend this play. DeAndre Hopkins, like I mean, he's the man there, right? Like this is Michael Thomas. This is what it is. Everyone's saying Drake going to erupt on the ground, but like the Panthers are ranked 28th in DVOA versus the run and the pass. They're awful either way, and they're going to give time to Kyler to have a better game. Kyler underperformed last week with 3 picks. I think it was 2 or 3. I think it was 3, right?
3.
But like
he's potentially 4.
He's going to have time to operate, and Hopkins is going to get open for sure and be his guy. I mean, this guy is leading the league in targets, receptions, and receiving yards already. I mean, this is Michael Thomas again. So like, I'm just saying, like, keep going in with this guy until he hits that Michael Thomas.
And he's going to be low owned too, right? He's going to be under 10% likely. So I love that.
He's 8,500, but like he should be over 9K in my opinion. But so keep going there is what I'm gonna tell people. All right. Okay, Brett, Minnesota, talk about it because we had a new wide receiver 2 emerge with Jefferson, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's also like kind of when you guys were bringing up the AJ Green. I mean, T. Higgins, the emergence of him and his air yards kind of make me a little bit bearish on that situation. It's just their offense has so many options, right? So that's kind of what makes me go against that. But yeah, Justin Jefferson, they allowed the kid to play, and that's basically what it was. Olabisi Johnson was wide receiver 2 weeks 1 and 2. Now we're starting to see these rookie wide receivers, I think, with no preseason finally come in and getting snaps, getting routes run. It's just the normal maturation of 2020, right? So he looks explosive, man. And a lot of people were saying that he was just a slot wide receiver. Well, he played, I mean, he looked good and won on the outside. So, yeah, I'm definitely going to have plenty of him in a favorable stack. This is one of my favorite games to stack. So yeah, I mean, I'm right there with Justin Jefferson in back-to-back weeks here.
All right, this guy's going to eat. Absolutely eat. Kenny Golladay, right? Like Marshawn Lattimore is out. Janoris Jenkins is out. So now they're down to P.J. Williams, Patrick Robinson, Justin Hardy against Golladay, Marvin Jones. Also, their defense has been torched by tight ends, right? So they're going to be trying to, like, cover Hawkinson as best they can, right? And, like, you just give me Golladay all day, like the number one option in this Detroit offense. I just don't see him failing now with all these people out. He's cheap, $6K. He looked healthy. He looked awesome.
Yeah, I think that'll eat in a little bit. I should have brought that up earlier, but I think that's obviously going to go up some now. He's only showing at like 7%. That's going to go up, and it'll probably eat a little bit into our boy DJ Moore there, right? With everything talked about, it'll start to space out a little bit more, and just, still
Agreed.
DJ Moore will still be extremely high owned, but like you said, a lot of it's going to move over to Golladay, and for good reason, as you just mentioned. One other guy I want to bring up right quick, just because the epic failure back to him, and I'm loving the Burrow play in that game, and I love your James Robinson take. I'll stick with that. But what about LaVisca? After burying everybody on that island game, and everyone wanted him for the big $1 million showdown or whatever it was, 300,000 up top, and he just crushed everyone. And now he's back, and he's still cheap, $4,400 against Cincy.
I thought maybe you were going to go to DJ Shark.
I do. I like him too. I know I didn't check today's latest report on him, but I think he's good to go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do. I definitely like him. I always like him all season since they dropped Fournette. I thought that's sort of the play for them, but we haven't seen it be a
nobody's going to play him. Like, he's going to be so low owned.
It's going to be even worse than a Galladay situation last week. Because
Galladay's same price too. Galladay's $6K this week, and so is Chark. So and Boyd is right there as well. So it's like you can see where the ownership is going to go. I do like that. I just thought of just because the Millie Maker or something like that. He's going to just have no ownership, but everyone wanted to play him. And I know you only have so many options on a showdown slate, and that obviously has a major part in it. But people have been talking about for a minute now. I think it's kind of a spot that he could just show up and blow up, and everyone's like, oh, and we've seen guys like you mentioned, Jefferson, Higgins. Guys are coming on the scene now, right? It's week 4. We're going to see more and more of it. So I definitely think there's an option there to go back to him in those game stacks.
Yep, I like it. And some other guys, Preston Williams is just a different piece of that Miami, bring back potential. Robbie Anderson has been putting up numbers and still won't get, much love in the Arizona game. You guys see where I'm focused on.
I like that over Moore in some lineups.
I just want to.
That'd be cool.
I just want to reiterate the point how much I love Will Fuller. He's off the injury report. I'll take the injury risk, the hammy risk, all that, and because 5,900, like, he is the number one option when healthy, and I just know how he could potentially just get deep. Cooks could too, and you're definitely right with that, Brett. But they're both cheap, like 4,500, 5,900. Like, there's either of them. If they go off, there's
just so much optionality with the prices this week. We don't have any of the elite like price studs at running back or wide receiver. There's just so many things to do. And I feel like a lot of the like the super talented guys, like the Kenny Galladays, are coming off an injury and they're still not priced where they should be,
Yep. So you got plenty of plays there. So let's move it on over to tight end. Looks like, so we do have a high-end option. We have Travis Kelce against New England, always in play. It's tough to really, spend all your salary at the tight end position just because of how volatile it is. But that's a guy that certainly brings a pretty high floor and a massive ceiling to the table. There's Mark Andrews, but that makes a lot of sense because he had some bad drops in that last game, and that's just kind of fluky. Makes sense to get him going, and he, certainly could have his way with Washington. So I get that. There's Tyler Higbee again, but Jared Cook is out. So talk to us about this potential value play. Either of you guys that
Brett's got this one. His boy Adam Troutman.
Yeah. All right, so Troutman, 6'5", 255, and it's mainly a situation where just the Saints are just without so many guys, right? And we see their point total at 28.8. Kamara cannot just keep scoring 2 touchdowns every single game. I mean, he scored 2 touchdowns week 1, week 2, week 3. There's going to be variance in that. So I really like a lot of these secondary Saints guys. I know we really haven't even talked about Traquan, Emmanuel Sanders, 100% in my player pool this week. But this Troutman kid got a lot of snaps once Cook went down.
Was recruited,
basically just came right in.
It was recruited as a quarterback, I just read. So the double dip is potentially in play here.
Taysom Jr. This is the backup to Tay. This is the next guy.
This is a gimmick play waiting to happen where he throws.
They like using that stuff, man.
Team.
So that makes sense now. It's good. I like that call.
But a 3rd round pick, and like again, they don't really have like very tall wide receivers to throw to. So like, give me him for red zone targets at the min price when all the tight ends just died last week. I'm way higher on tight ends this week, but still. I'm going to be kind of mixing it all around different price tiers. You're right. I'm right back on Waller again this week. Paying all the way up to Kelsey feels good, like at 6,800. But I think I'm done with Logan Thomas, at least for the time being. Kind of been getting kind of like on him on too many lineups. I'd rather go up to Troutman. I'm actually going to stack this Chargers Tampa Bay game a little bit. I know I got cut off when I was giving my take about Ronald Jones, but no Godwin this week. I'm really, really high on Ronald Jones at 4,700. Leonard Fournette's ruled out already. I don't know if I got cut off when I was saying that take, but I think bringing it back with Hunter Henry makes a lot of sense in that game, which this game is not a 50-point total, so I think it's going to be a sneakier stack option.
Interesting. I don't really – the more that I think about it, it's like I don't really care about tight end. But I like Darren Waller. TJ Hawkinson, he saw his
Snaps,
most –
baby. Snaps.
Yeah, he's –
I know where you're going.
He also saw his most targets of the season last week now, and that was with Golladay back. But like the thing there is that could have been matchup related with Arizona, so that's interesting. But like the Saints have been really bad in getting crushed by tight ends this season, so that was somebody that I was potentially interested in. Mike Gesicki, for sure, like as another bring back option in that game. Basically, he is a slot receiver. He's lining up Slaughter out wide and like close to 90% of his snaps.
Yeah.
And so Jamal Adams is banged up.
He's out.
Yeah,
it's over.
He's out.
So that's
and that Cedric Wilson.
That's huge.
And that Cedric Wilson ran all of his routes out of the slot with that monster game for the Cowboys at wide receiver 4 last week.
Yeah, and CD did bad, but CD played out of the slot and still had like 6 for 40. Like he still did damage when he did get the ball. So it's like they just get crushed there already. And now you take away their best guy that they brought over from the Jets and Jamal Adams. It's like, I think he can eat. Because I think the ownership's wrong on him right now, by the way. Like it shows 7%.
I don't think we've ever had an issue with Gesicki, his athleticism. It's always about like, is he an actual football player? Can he get snaps? And now that he is in this offense, it looks like a perfect.
So basically the way I look at it, it's like, give me the guys who can go off, right? Like if I can get up to Kelsey or Andrews, I'll get there, but I prefer Kelsey. Darren Waller, I really like. I like that game. I like Buffalo. I love the Buffalo side, and I want to bring back. And they've been giving up points. I love Gesicki. I like Hawkinson. I like Hunter Henry potentially. Especially if they're not going to be able to run much. It's just another option for them in the passing game to go along with Eckler. And I think Evan Ingram is gonna go off soon. So like and then Dalton Schultz makes sense because of the matchup, right? Like the Cleveland just gets absolutely torched by tight ends always. It's just their defensive scheme. They're susceptible over the middle. Dalton Schultz could certainly do it, but like I'm less high in him. So it's like I want the guys where I think I can like just envision massive upside, and like I think those are the guys that I'm thinking of I guess Logan Thomas makes more sense. Even like
just was going to say that. I know Brett said he's off him, but the one thing about that, and I know my team pretty well, is Baltimore with, Tavon Young is out for the season. That's one of their cornerbacks. And then if, they've already, so the secondary's got a little bit banged up. We saw it last week. Kelsey was able to eat, but it's Kelsey, so you're hard to say that, that's a way to go. But the one thought is just especially if Terry McLaurin's out, and Sims, who McLaurin got a thigh injury on Thursday and didn't practice today or whatever, and Sims is in trouble. So, you got a team that's so banged up. Why not? And we've been waiting for Logan Thomas. So jump off the train now. You got to worry about him going off. So I do like that. I like the Troutman call. Just for that, not just the gadgety play. I just think he's cheap enough that you can almost make anything work. But to Brett's point earlier, this is one of those slates where you don't really have Hopkins is such a delta between him and the second guy that it's you can get him, and Kamara the same way at 8K, but no 10K guy. So there's lots of options, and we like all those cheap quarterbacks that you can fit Kelsey in, and he absolutely can break this slate wide open. Everyone wants to play cheap tight ends for the most part, or is going to be on Mike Gesicki for good reason, and TJ Hawkinson, who we mentioned. So I do like Kelsey for that reason. I like your Waller take. And then the other two that kind of stand out are Hunter Henry, who Brett mentioned, and Evan Ingram, who you mentioned. So that's just sort of the two lower-owned guys versus Hawkinson and Gesicki. They're going to be really popular. And then Waller's sort of the pay up, with Kelsey at the very top being definitely an option that you can get to this week, even if it's just a one-off for that game. Just use him.
And then I throw out one last revenge play. You got to have a revenge narrative play, and that's Tyler Eifert going against his former squad.
Saints.
He's basically splitting time with O'Shaughnessy, so it's it's not his clear job, but hopefully they he wants a touchdown in this game, and hopefully they scheme something up for him.
I like that call.
All right. I think that's good to go for tight ends. We just want guys who can go off. I think the Logan Thomas makes sense from, the thing with Logan Thomas that everyone talks about, it's the quality of his targets are bad because Haskins hasn't, he's constantly tried to get him looks. His targets 7, 9, 8, elite. That's elite numbers for a tight end. It's just they haven't been good targets. But, he's their option in the passing game right now. So, man, if you bet on usage, then that's the guy. All right, let's take us home with a favorite stack. We always end up saying 2, just because that's how we do it.
Yeah, or 3,
yeah. Whatever pops into your head. But I'll start it off because I've already planted my flag. It's going to be Kyler to DeAndre Hopkins, and we're going to bring it back with either Mike Davis or DJ Moore. You can even do both if you want to. If you want to do a real man stack for you. So that's my favorite one. Then I still like Josh Allen. So I'm gonna say Josh Allen because I think he's gonna be lower owned, brings a lot of the rushing upside, but I think Diggs is gonna get him. However, if you don't want Diggs, you can use that cheaper price of John Brown, and he could certainly, bust off a long one in this matchup too. And people aren't going to play him back from injury, so I like that. And you bring it back with Darren Waller. So those are my 2. And you guys know how I like my rushing quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'll stick with the Minnesota-Houston stack. I'll do Deshaun Watson, and I'll just double stack it with Cooks and Fuller. Definitely cheap and optionality, and then bring it back with a lower-owned Delvin Cook.
Yes. Do you got a second one?
Yeah, if I want to go a little bit off the board off that, then I'll do a stack with Justin Herbert to Hunter Henry, and then bring it back with Ronald Jones.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I said that. I mentioned that one earlier as a thought process.
If I don't puke now, oh God.
Yeah, I wonder actually.
That's how you win a milli right there.
No, I think the way to win a milli this week might be to leave Herbert out of it and play Eckler and Allen for their 30 short, tight little targets that don't really, you know what I mean? They just stack up the points, and Herbert, then you use like a naked quarterback, like a Josh Allen or someone in that same lineup that goes off and just crushes. But no, I don't hate it. I definitely was with you on that. And we didn't even mention Allen, but 19 targets last week, Keenan Allen. So
yeah,
I like
got
that.
legs too. So
yeah, it's true. I could use it. Maybe I will still use it, but I got a couple. Your same Houston stack. One tight end, though, I forgot to bring up, has been getting targets lately. Jordan Akins. I do like that. Eric Beimfor liked him last week, and we were talking about that a little bit, how that sort of could be a sneaky play, and it kind of didn't work. So now go back to it this week in a game that we think is going to shoot out. That's definitely a good spot to roll him out with Fuller. And then, like you said, I'm already on Dalvin Cook. You guys know that. I couldn't stop talking about him earlier. Cam, one thing you brought up, I didn't really notice the James White stuff. I didn't see that he was back at practice, and I hope he goes. I hope everything, can get through is all good. Obviously, it's a tough time, as I mentioned. So if he goes out, I kind of just thought about what you said. Cam's going to be looking for those short passes. You mentioned it when you talked about Edelman earlier. What about a Cam Newton, Edelman, and James White? Just all those checkdowns to the boys all day long, and that's how they stick with this game and stay in it. We also could have a letdown spot, don't forget, from Kansas City. Just had their, early season Super Bowl or AFC Championship type matchup, call it, with the Ravens. Got the W, a huge one. They could have a letdown, but then you use like a guy like Kelsey on the other side of that. That could be a really nice stack. And then I'm going to give a third just because, but it's got to be Burrow, right? My boy Joe Burrow, Boyd, run it back. I think I'm leaning way more now to Kirkwood's James Robinson take, and that sets up well for that. But I do also like the Eifert revenge. So maybe just stack that game up and get AJ Green in there too for a game stack, all 5 of them, and let it run.
I'm going to have to write down James Robinson just to make sure that I play him after.
Boys, there's a lot of good games. That's what it comes down to. So many good games this weekend.
All right. I hope everybody wins my. I know our longtime listener, the Big Easy E, something from Twitter. Yep. He's our loyal listener. Listen, I know he's going to love that. I know he's going to love the David Montgomery take. So make sure we I'll see him up in the top of the leaderboards with that one. But it's another week in the books. Hopefully we're profitable. I can't dump all my money on the Celtics again, which is nice. So onward and upward from here. So have a good week, guys. This has been the RG DFS Tournament Takes podcast, and we'll catch you again next week.
Have a good one.